I'm Tom Field. I'm Senior Vice President of Editorial with Information Security Media Group. I am delighted to welcome you to our session today, which is about three key components to continuous compliance and risk management. Joining me today is Robin Das. You know him as Executive Director, Market Growth Strategy with DataBee, a Comcast company. Before I bring Robin onto the stage here, a little bit of background. Compliance, security, and risk teams are often hindered by fragmented data and manual reactive workflows. This session today explores how DataBee's unified security data fabric enables continuous compliance and risk management by integrating continuous controls monitoring, vulnerability and asset exposure management, and a connected data foundation to drive automation, visibility, and business alignment. Bit of background on my organization. Information Security Media Group is a global education and intelligence firm. We're based in the U.S. in Princeton, New Jersey, and you may know us by any number of our 38 media properties. These include Bank Info Security, Data Breach Today, and AItoday.io. Just a few notes of housekeeping. If you have any questions for Robin today, you may submit them anytime by the chat window on your screen. I may not get to every question, but for those that we can answer, in the course of today's session, we'll get responses back to you via email. Should you encounter any technical issues while viewing today's webinar, I urge you to take down the email address you see on your screen. If you write to webinars@ismg.io, we have got support staff standing by to help. And a reminder, today's webinar is copyrighted material meant for today's session and individual study purposes only. If you would like to use any of the information that we present today, or if you're looking for customized training materials, please contact us. Delighted to introduce our sponsor, DataBee. DataBee, a Comcast company, offers the DataBee Security, Risk, and Compliance Data Fabric Platform and DataBee Blue Vector, an on-premises network detection and response platform offered to some of the world's large enterprises and federal agencies. They help their customers work smarter with an evidence-centric approach to security that prepares them for what's next. Developed and proven at scale, DataBee delivers connected security and compliance data and insights that can work for everyone in an organization. Built to protect critical government and enterprise networks, DataBee Blue Vector delivers AI-powered NDR for visibility across network, devices, users, files, and data to discover and hunt skilled and motivated threats. Learn more at databee.ai. And welcome back to Robin Das, Executive Director, Market Growth Strategy for DataBee. This, of course, is a new cybersecurity business unit developing and bringing to market a security, risk, and compliance data fabric platform. And as we said, an NDR, both designed for large enterprise and critical infrastructure organizations. Robin is responsible for defining DataBee's unique value proposition in this market, long-term strategy and product vision, and business development opportunities. With that, let's bring on to our stage here, Robin Das. Welcome back. Pleasure to see you again.
It's great to be back, Tom.
So in a prior session, we attempted to demystify the security data fabric and how it can benefit compliance, security, and GRC teams. Drawing from that conversation, what is important context for this session today?
Yeah, I mean, I think just sort of, again, without diving too deeply into what we covered in the last session, I think the first thing is security data fabric is that foundational data layer that helps everybody in the organization, especially compliance, more than anyone can kind of benefit from this. When you think about sort of any large enterprise, they have a lot of different tools. And especially the auditors, we sometimes find that they're very reliant upon these other teams to kind of give them access, whether it's the HR data, whether it's the finance data, whether it's the cyber team, IT, et cetera. And so, it's kind of a painful ask for the audit team to kind of constantly be asking people for data. And in some ways, when you think about it, you flip it on its head, it's also pretty difficult for the cybersecurity team because they're trying to keep the business safe. And then all of a sudden they're having to kind of respond to sort of different auditors that are sort of asking them from different data sets, and it sort of distracts them a lot from their day to day. And so having this like sort of singular source of truth that everybody can pull from sort of really eases some frictions in the organization. And then secondly, I think sort of while we're thinking about frictions, another source of these frictions could be these competing sources of truth. So, different teams might spend different time sort of arguing about who's kind of got the right set of data. And so when you have this unified singular source of truth, you can kind of ease that journey. And that's one of these things that we've kind of found both at Comcast And when we start to help our clients, they don't have as much sort of pain and friction when it comes to audit time.
So let's make the direct tie between the security data fabric and compliance and risk management. What can you share, please?
Yeah, sort of leading on from sort of what we talked about, I think when it comes to a security data fabric, it really does benefit compliance in a couple of key ways. First of all, when you have all the data coming in, there's a super amount of flexibility with that. And so that means you can really account, the frameworks are sometimes quite rigid. And sort of it's all about not the framework itself, it's about how you interpret them and how you interpret them into your particular environment and your particular enterprise. And so by having all this data, you can kind of really slice it and dice it in a way that really works for your business. And so that's the first thing. And then the second piece of it is like the other, the frameworks are going to change over time, right? And so when you think about that, like having all this data means that you can kind of be flexible and you can adapt to the needs and the changes of the regulations and the frameworks sort of pretty quickly without sort of it being this sort of long drawn out process. And then finally, I think the other way that it really, really lends itself is sort of what we'd call a concept of like regulatory overlap. And what I mean by that is oftentimes, you might have to implement multiple frameworks within your business, but the underlying source data is kind of all the same. Like a really good example, a couple of like really good examples that spring to mind are sort of things like, your identity data sources. They're used across multiple controls and metrics, because it helps capture organizational hierarchy and it can help you sort of with your frameworks of like, are you consistent with MFA? And you can kind of look at where your MFA is sort of, deployed or not deployed, privileged access management, user access reviews. So you need that organizational layer to be able to kind of help with those dashboards. But it's not like you have to kind of feed it into like a bunch of different tools. Once it's all there in this sort of singular repository, you sort of pull it out and sort of use it as needed. And there's other examples of sort of this singular data source that can be used in multiple different frameworks like CMDB and sort of vulnerability scanners.
So what are some of the unique challenges that these particular groups face in compliance and risk management?
Yeah, I mean, again, we sort of touched upon, the data access, right? Like that's just kind of a key one. And again, once it's sitting in this data fabric, it kind of makes life easier. And then I think one of the other challenges these groups face is like, they spend a lot of time sort of reporting out on the data and not enough time sort of improving the data or working with the teams to kind of help improve the data. So it's one thing to be like the referee and keep score, and that's kind of okay. But what really I think makes people excited to get up in the morning and sort of almost sort of gets people engaged is when they can actually feel like they can be a partner with the business and help the business get more compliant versus just kind of spending all their time sort of reporting out, you're not doing a great job or you're doing a good job. Like it's more fun, I think. What we find, at least with our clients, is when we can kind of, you know, change their role from like referee to sort of participant, right? And they actually get to be part of the game and actually help the businesses sort of improve compliance and sort of give them tactics and procedures and ways in which they can improve it. So I think those are some of the things we see.
Fair to say when they've got disparate tools as well, every tool has its own dashboard that comes with its own challenges.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's another sort of key benefit is like by taking all this and putting it into sort of one, I wouldn't call it one sort of overarching dashboard because it's still multiple dashboards, but if you have sort of two or three different tools reporting out on EDR coverage because you have two or three different EDRs, they're all going to be really good at reporting about their particular tool. They're not going to be so good at sort of consolidating that into a sort of a unified view across the enterprise.
So let's dive into, Robin, how the security data fabric can help transform this fragmented data into what you want to see, which is real-time, outcome-driven reporting.
Yeah, and so I mean, I think going back to dashboards, a lot of times if the dashboard sort of shows your 15%, 15% of your devices potentially are sort of, out of compliant, the next question is well, now what? Like, and a lot of the times we'll find, at least for us, like a lot of other things in the space will just kind of give you a pass or a fail or a yes or a no. What we like to kind of do is help, again, drive that change. And so, our dashboards all have like a summary and a detail view. And then, in the summary view, it can kind of give you some of the areas you need to improve. If we look at the sort of device example, what fields in your CMDB must be completed? Do you have all these fields completed? A quick view of what's compliant, what's not compliant, and why not. And then the next piece of it is we don't just like report out. And again, this is sort of going back to this analogy of being referee or participant. We can kind of give you the steps that you need to take to get yourself more compliant. What fields are required, like what decommissioned devices are active that you sort of need to think about. And then, those are on the summary views. And then we kind of like have a detailed view, which is our auditors actually, the auditors really like this because it kind of provides the detail and isn't just the trust us. It's like, trust but verify piece of it. And so it can really sort of show you, exactly the devices that are not healthy and exactly the devices that need to be sort of fixed. And so, we sort of try and give you not just like the reporting, but the actionability. We even have sort of proactive tools like something like Beekeeper that kind of helps a lot of our clients with some of their key pain points. Which is tracking down the owner of a device. And it wouldn't be the first time that CMDB is out of date, but that's some of the things we would do.
Okay, you talked about Beekeeper. Tell me more about it and how it works, please.
Yeah. So Beekeeper is this kind of quite interesting AI agent that we have, and it sort of does a lot of the work in the background. To the idea of like the CMDB sort of always being a moving target and never being sort of compliant completely, and never being completely up to date. So Beekeeper reaches out to potential owners. So we have this. We touched upon this in the first series that we ran about entity resolution. And so within sort of the tool, some of the secret sauce that we have is this concept of entity resolution, where it sort of triangulates different data sources together and comes up with likely owners of sort of unclaimed assets. So Beekeeper leverages that sort of underlying sort of work to then reach out proactively to these potential owners and sort of verify, are they the owners of the asset or are they not the owners of the asset? And so if they are not the owner of that asset, they would tell Beekeeper, and Beekeeper would then sort of work its way down the list to the next likely owner, and so on and so forth. And then once it does find the owner, it then will update the CMDB. And so the great news is Beekeeper can sort of, I think of it as being this singular entity, but in reality, it's a bunch of AI agents sort of spread out, all verifying with potential owners, and then sort of taking that and sort of updating the database. And so it's a key first step to not only compliance, but security, because, you can't protect what you don't know you have. And then you can't sort of tell people to patch and take down systems if you don't know who the owners are. And so this is like a key foundational step to any compliance and security program.
If I understand Beekeeper correctly, say I'm a worker bee, I get a promotion, I change teams, I get a new laptop, Beekeeper is going to follow me all the way through.
Yeah, exactly. And that's part of the reason that, if you think about where CMDB sometimes gets out of date, again, to your point, Tom Field, he sort of gets a promotion and he should be promoted because Tom Fields are awesome.
Thank you very much.
And, Tom Field will change his laptop and Tom Field will get a new, phone and stuff like that. And so Beekeeper will constantly stay on top of these changes, sort of this, this regulatory, this regular sort of changes that any sort of employee happens. And okay, it's easy when we think about just Tom Field, but when we think about sort of everybody in an enterprise, it's quite a lot to stay on top of. And so that's where Beekeeper can really, again, help these teams sort of stay on top of asset ownership and identification.
So let's dive a little bit deeper. What if you can tell me how you, one, manage risk exposure, two, streamline compliance, and three, translate the dense technical metrics into clear business value?
Yeah. So the first thing is like, I think every enterprise has different notions of what's risky and what's not. And so because it's very sort of industry dependent, it's very sort of context dependent. And so again, this is kind of going back to the benefit of the security data fabric, and your dashboards are your dashboards. Like, we're not trying to lock you into our proprietary data. We're trying to work with you as a partner to kind of help identify what's important to you as an enterprise and what's risky to you as an enterprise. And so that's part of the key part of the solution is again, we're trying to work with you to kind of help identify what's important to your business within the context of some of these regulatory frameworks, and implement them. And to that end, we want to obviously account for your, priorities. And to that end, we have like a professional services arm that can kind of come in. There's some stuff that you get out of the box. But then we also have professional services that can kind of come in and help work with you to kind of design dashboards and sort of pull in the relevant data sets, sort of to really sort of account for your business needs. And then it really kind of lends itself well to things like sort of a new notion of outcome driven metrics. This is the notion of sort of agreeing with the business who may not understand cybersecurity or compliance as well as the teams potentially watching this call do. But you kind of have this mutually set of agreed upon SLAs. We found our clients really sort of like this approach of outcome-driven metrics can really show the business value of any security program or any compliance program. And again, we would work with you to kind of help implement these outcome-driven metrics and sort of do reporting upon it sort of at the enterprise.
Robert, I wonder if you can share some real-world case studies and results your customers have seen.
Yeah, there's obviously a limit to sort of how much we're allowed to say
Of
about sort
course.
of a lot of our customers. But really, across the board, the biggest results we see are really with efficiencies, right? So sort of the analysts, back to this idea of, being referees or participants, right? Like we're really seeing like the analysts can be sort of more effective, and more happy in their roles because again, they're not just sort of having to spend their time living in spreadsheets, living in sort of manual pivot tables, sort of focused on the reporting. They can actually sort of engage with the business and help sort of drive compliance forward. And so the only way you can do that is by freeing up their time. And so we sort of see sort of efficiencies there. It sort of help prevents like this audit team from burning out, right? Because they're not, again, spending their time doing sort of the more monotonous tasks of reporting and manual overhead. And they're really sort of being able to sort of, again, use sort of higher levels of their brain to do stuff. And then, it also translates its way through the organization. So now the senior leadership team can ask the more audacious questions. I remember our CISO, Nupa Davis, when we went on this journey, she talked a lot about how, she would ask simple questions and it would take them weeks to kind of come up with an answer. And now, that's sort of taken as written. And it's all about asking sort of interesting, audacious questions, of the team and sort of like really elevating the types of questions and the types of reporting they pull. And so, I think those are some of the key real world examples. And even though that might sound like it's pretty sort of ambitious and people might feel a bit overwhelmed, we really try and make it easy for our customers to onboard them. And so, we have sort of introductory sort of packages of like just kind of 4 key dashboards that, just kind of get them out the gate, a couple of key controls, a couple of key data sets, and sort of give them these, quick path to value and sort of offer these remediation steps, as appropriate. Because really the way we think of it is we want to be sort of this long-term compliance partner with our customers. And so, again, it's sort of like that crawl, walk, run. And so we can kind of get you easily onboarded and up and running with like sort of this 4 sort of introductory set of dashboards. And then from there, we sort of build, and we'll sort of get a sense of where your compliance teams are moving. And we can kind of build from that.
Very good. We covered a lot here in a short period of time. Where can our viewers go to learn more about the security data fabric and its practical uses?
Yeah, go to the website, databee.ai. Hopefully some of the passion came through. I love talking to our customers about this. And so, if they go there to request a demo, it's an inbox that I actually manage. So I will get their email, and I would personally love to kind of chat with them. And be happy to like set up time with some of our experts, and just take things from there.
Beautiful. Robin, as always, I appreciate your time and insight. Thank you so much for answering my questions.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Tom.
And thank you to our attendees. We do know you took time out of your day to attend this. We're grateful for that. And I trust you're walking away with some excellent new insight that you can put to use. As always, I look forward to seeing you at one of our upcoming sessions. And until then, for Information Security Media Group, I'm Tom Field. Thank you for your time and attention today.